You can't hear me? Let me just play with these buttons. It says. Talk into it better? Is that better? Okay, thank you very much. All right. Thank you all. Well, welcome. Oh, yes, there we are. Well, it just needed to warm up a little, I guess. All right, we will call the meeting of the Financial Institutions and Insurance Committee for Tuesday, February 25th to order. And at this time, we have a hearing. And I hope you all, before we start the hearings, had a great little break. So we're going to open the hearing on House Bill 2043. And Eileen, would you like to do a quick overview? And all of these bills are going to sound very familiar to you all. So these hearings should go pretty quick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee. House Bill 2043 is the bill that we had that would require agents and insurers to respond to inquiries from the commissioner within 14 calendar days. And it would also authorize certain rebate pilot programs to exceed 1 year in duration. As introduced, House Bill 2043 would require agents and insurers to respond to an inquiry from the commissioner that is related to a particular matter within 14 calendar days. Again, as introduced, the bill would also allow an insurer or producer that is testing a value-added product or service to request additional time to determine if that product or service will satisfy the criteria required to offer it on a permanent basis. Just a reminder, this is the House version of our Senate Bill 23. The House Committee on Insurance amended the bill, changing the bill from requiring an insurer to respond to an inquiry from the commissioner relating to a particular matter within 14 calendar days to requiring an insurer to respond to any inquiry from the commissioner within 14 calendar days. You can see that amendment on page 8 in line 16 of the bill. The House Committee of the Whole passed the bill on a vote of 97 to 14 on February 7th. And with that, Madam Chair, I can stand for questions.
Committee, do you have questions of the reviser? Okay, very good. Thank you, Eileen. So we will open our hearing with testimony from Eric Turek from the Kansas Insurance Department. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Eric Turek with the Kansas Department of Insurance. Pleased to be here in support of House Bill 2043. I know that you've heard me speak about this policy before, but I want to reiterate the main impetus behind this bill. It's really to increase the current time frame for insurers and insurance companies and agents to respond to the department, specifically when it concerns consumer complaints. We do process and review thousands of consumer complaints each year, consumers who have issues with their insurance companies, their policies, whatever it may be. And there are absolutely cases where the companies respond in within 48 hours, 3 days, 4 days, whatever it may be. But more often than not, it takes insurance companies 13, 14, or 15 business days to respond to the department concerning consumer complaints. And we know that this is, when we receive these complaints, it's usually during a time of urgency for the consumer. It's 2025. We were the first state to engage in the pilot program, the external company complaint portal, where the department staff and the company staff can upload documents to this portal. So to really quickly handle these complaints, we know that the companies can respond faster. We find that 14 calendar days is a great balance between the needs of the consumer and the needs of the insurance companies to respond to consumer complaints. I will note that that's how we introduced the bill, just to shorten the time frame for the consumer complaint aspect. The House did amend the language to require that both agents and the insurance companies respond to any inquiry within 14 calendar days. We do have some concern about that. While I think that there was a good faith effort to clear confusion and streamline things, it definitely could conflict with other statutes, especially those that govern examinations of insurance companies and accreditation standards. So with that, I'd be happy. Another thing I do want to mention, it does also allow value-added service pilot programs to take place for longer than a year's time. Happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Committee questions, Senator Gossage?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually like it the way it was worded before. And I think the reason being is that an insurer's failing upon receipt of, because otherwise, when does the 14 days begin? It's upon their receiving the complaint, as opposed to when the department receives the complaint. So I know I have 14 days from the time that the complaint comes to me to respond to an inquiry from the insurance department. And then it says concerning a complaint or injury related to the particular matter within 14 calendar days of receipt of such inquiry to furnish the department with an adequate response to such inquiry. I know that's pretty wordy, but I actually think trying to make it too concise with respond to within 14 days does not make it necessarily as clear in law, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Eric, did you want to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have heard concern from the industry on this language, on specifically the receipt. When does the 14 calendar timeline begin? I have heard that, we have heard that concern.
Senator Gossage, maybe when we get ready to work this bill, we might want to amend it back to our version, which we like better. Yes. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Senator Warren, and then Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Eric. So you had said that the 14 calendar days and the, I guess now the bill says 14 calendar days. It changed from 15 business days to 14 calendar days in subsection 17 on page 14, and you said this time frame might cause some conflict with other time frames and other statutes. So how are our insurers supposed to deal with conflict and our statutes, and why would we purposefully, knowingly create a conflict in timing in our statutes?
Yes, I'd be happy to clarify. So as we introduced the bill, it would clarify that the insurance companies would have, so currently in regulation, they must respond within 15 business days. We would just be shrinking that to 14. That was the intent of the bill, and the same would be applied to the agents as well, just so that the requirements to respond to the department with respect to consumer complaints within 14 calendar days. The House amended the bill to say that insurers or agents and agents have to respond to an inquiry, so not necessarily related to just consumer complaints. And I'll say that we do have other timeframe requirements in statute that originally would not be affected by this language, but because the House added that language, that does have some concern from us. And I think the industry has some other concerns too.
And when we're talking about 14 calendar days, that's really going from 15 business days down to 10 business days. Because if you've got, I mean, assuming just regular weekends in there, not holidays, and holidays count as the 14 calendar days and weekends count. And our Senate version was just 14 calendar days across inquiries and complaints.
So
Do you want to answer that, or do you want the
I can answer it real quickly. So if you look at page 8 or page 14, it's the language that's there, just minus the striking and minus the bold. So it would be 14 days, 14 calendar days for consumer complaints. What's already in regulation is 15 business days for consumer complaints, so they would just reduce that. So, and all other requirements to respond to the department would remain the same.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Eric. Would it be consistent if the committee decides that it wants to talk about receipt of such inquiry, to do that in the language both on 8 and on 14?
Go ahead, Eric.
I think it would be appropriate for the committee to discuss that and consider that. And I think that industry representatives in the room may also be able to express their concern with adding some of that language back into the bill.
Senator Gossage?
I'm sorry, it's been a minute since we did our version. On page 14, is that different from our version? Have they changed that as well, or just 8? Just 8.
Eric, Eileen answered that for you.
Her answer
Do you
was
want
just
to
page 8.
respond? Okay, very good.
Okay,
Any
thank
other-
you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kansas? Eric, you wanted to make a statement? Yes.
Yes, I think that there might be a change from Senate Bill 23 on page 14 and 2043 on page 14 if the reviser wants to verify with the striking of the language.
As long as you two know what you're talking about, we are good. Okay. Very good. Any other questions for Eric? Okay, we have neutral testimony from Marla Carpenter on behalf of the Kansas Association of Property and Casualty Insurance Companies. Welcome, Marla.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I am here on behalf of the Kansas Association of Property and Casualty Insurance Companies. We were neutral on the original bill, but we do have concerns with the amendment that the House added. We are okay. We work with the department this summer and fall and talked about a timeline for consumer complaint responses. And we ultimately agreed on the 14 calendar days. We did not discuss or even contemplate any of the other response times to the department on any of the other inquiries that they had. And we do have concerns with the blanket 14 calendar day statement. And we request that the committee remove the amendment from the House. And if there is concern, the Department of Insurance does have tools in place if companies and agents do not respond in a timely manner. But with the blanket 14 calendar days, we do have concerns as to conflicting statutes and what all that will impact. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Marla. Questions? Senator Gossage.
Hi, Marley. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So is your concern then with page 14, number 17?
I do not have the bill in front of me, but if Eric and Eileen say that I have concern, that's where the concerns are, yes.
Okay.
It is the blanket, making it a blanket statement, not just narrow to consumer complaints.
Because page 8 is failure to respond to an inquiry and insurers failing, but that was already 14, correct?
No, there is never a 14 calendar days in the statute. It was always 15 business days. And so the original intent of the bill was to reduce it to 14 calendar days for consumer complaints only.
And I'm just trying to remember, the consumer complaints are this, is that on page 8? I'm sorry. Forgive me that I've,
Page 14.
it's page 14 is the consumer complaint. Is that right?
That's the part that yes, page 14.
So it's page 8 that you're concerned about because that's more of the blanket.
Sorry. Let me confer with my counsel.
Okay.
Reviser, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you want to go ahead, Marlene? Okay. So in the original bill, Senate Bill 23, the language on page 14 in paragraph subsection 17, that language that's in italics was part of the original bill that was brought to committee. So it would make it failed to respond to an inquiry from the commissioner within 15 business days, so a general inquiry, or failed to respond to an inquiry within 14 calendar days from the commissioner concerning a complaint or an inquiry related to a particular matter. So if you take that language, I believe what the attempt was by the department, and Eric can correct me if I'm wrong, but the language that was on page 8 was to kind of reinforce that thought by saying an insurer's failing upon receipt of any inquiry concerning a complaint or inquiry related to a particular matter within 14 calendar days. It only talked about part of it because that's the statute pertaining to unfair methods of competition and trade deceptions, and it's a consumer protection statute. As far as where the 14 days came from and all of that, the House Committee felt, certain members of the House Committee felt very strongly that they would be confused if they saw 15 calendar days or 14 calendar days or 14 days relating to whatever complaint. And this was their attempt to clarify that. I don't believe that there was a great deal of thought put into how the industry would react to such a change. I believe at the time the department was neutral on the amendment, as they normally are. They try to support the committees whenever that happens. But that's kind of the history of where the 14 calendar days came from.
So if I may ask, Madam Chair, if we were to say that, if I were to have an amendment or somebody were to have an amendment and the amendment would say, put it back the way it was in our Senate version, you would know exactly what I meant? Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Marla, did you want to speak to any of that, and then we'll go to Senator Warren?
No, and I can assure you that the companies will know the timelines to respond back to the department. They would not be confused if there's two separate timelines.
Senator Warren?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I thought we were interested in taking it back to 14 calendar days for all kinds of inquiries and complaints.
That would just be for consumer complaints only. All other inquiries from the department would be as in current statute. And
Which is 15 business days. Yes. So did our Senate version, I thought I was hearing our Senate version, which I don't recall exactly, made it all 14 calendar days.
that was the House version.
Okay, got it. And the industry would be fine if we kept it 15 business days for inquiries and 14 calendar days for consumer complaints. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Eileen, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric had mentioned that this committee had amended the bill. We amended the bill in a manner that didn't even talk about this issue. The amendment was to grant relating to the value-added products or services, to say that, instead of being open-ended, there was the amendment to say that upon request, the commissioner may grant an extension of a specified time. This amendment has nothing to do with the amendments that the House made. So in case you're worrying that there is another amendment flying out there that can change calendar days or business days or Lunar New Year's, it all would be the same.
Committee, any other questions? Okay, very good. We know that we will probably need then to have an amendment for this, and we will do that so that it's maybe less confusing. All right. Eileen? Sure.
Just as a point of clarification, Madam Chair, if anybody wanted to request an amendment from your friendly neighborhood reviser, the friendly neighborhood reviser would really appreciate it if you emailed her so she can track whatever has changed instead of relying on her very faulty memory, or faulty at times memory. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you. All right. There's no opponent testimony on this. So if there's no other questions, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 2043. We're going to open the hearing on 2050. You have the folder. You should have the House bill in front of you. Eileen, would you like to explain 2050?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2050 is the bill that we all affectionately refer to as the fee bill. As introduced, House Bill 2050 would authorize the commissioner to set the amount of certain fees collected. Currently, the statute currently the fees within the statutes specify a flat dollar amount that's charged for the purpose of, stated in the statute. This bill would change those flat fees and turn them into a maximum amount that the department could charge, or a ceiling, which can be charged for the statutory purpose. The bill would grant the commissioner the authority to set the amount of fees annually up to the ceiling amount by December 1st of each year for the upcoming year, and then cause those fee amounts to be published in the Kansas Register no later than December 1st. The statutes in the bill are listed in the, the statutes are listed in the bill. This is the same bill as our Senate Bill 24. The House Committee on Insurance amended the bill relating to the fee charged for each newly certified agent. There was some language being thrown around that it was a lifetime appointment, and some committee members got a little bit confused with that. So the committee added language to clarify that the $2 fee charged is the only fee that shall be charged until such time that either the company or the agent terminates such appointment. And you can see that amendment on page 3 of the bill in lines 39 to the beginning of line 40. And the House Committee of the Whole unanimously passed the bill on February 7th, and I can stand for questions.
Committee questions? Eileen, I've got a quick one for you. So does that language on page 3 that just clarifies that $2 fee, is that all it does, is just clarifies?
All it does is clarify, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand the intent of this, but it's talking about all such companies shall pay a fee of $2 for each agent newly certified, and then it says, until such time that either the company terminates such appointment. So they're really paying
$2 once for
each person.
newly certified agent until the agent either quits or the insured terminates, the company terminates employment of the agent. It's what the industry calls a lifetime appointment fee.
I understand that.
But, okay, I'm just trying to help.
I was, and I'll take a little more time to read it and talk to you. Thank you.
Any other questions of the reviser? Okay, thank you, Eileen. We will open our hearing, and we have Eric Turek. You want to speak to us about House Bill 2050?
Would be glad to, Madam Chair. Eric Turek again from the Kansas Department of Insurance. Pleased to speak to you all in support of House Bill 2050. I'll start by talking about the, since it was last discussed, the appointment renewal fee. The department collects these fees every year from every insurance company. Every insurance company has to appoint an agent before they can sell on their behalf. This is $2 for domestic companies and $5 for foreign or out-of-state companies. And the renewal aspect of this, we collect roughly $6 million in revenue each year. We are eliminating the renewal aspect, and we would reduce our revenues by about $6 million. I think that the language that was inserted at the bottom of page 3, we only inserted newly to clarify that, that we would no longer collect the renewal aspect. We have no problem with the language that was inserted by the House. I do want to also talk about the other aspect of the bill, the flexibility to lower fees. You'll see that the majority of these fees are on the first few pages of the bill. Examination of charter and other documents, annual statement fees, certificates of authority. The majority of this bill concerns the flexibility to lower fees. 2 years ago, the legislature passed House Bill 2090. I know that you've heard me talk about this before, but the legislature allowed the commissioner to lower licensure fees. And during 2024, the commissioner roughly cut those in half, and new licensees paid $1 million less to the department, and we have continued those fees for 2025. Ultimately, this would allow the commissioner to lower fees for about 100 different fees. She would have to publish those in the register on December 1 of each year. We have found that this allows us to ensure that our fees reflect the cost of doing business for the department. Happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Eric. Questions, committee? Senator Warren?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Eric. So on page 3, on line 38, it says newly certified, and then the House added on line 39, until such time that either the company or the agent terminates such appointment. So if you're reading the statute, or the bill, if it were to become law, is it a one-time $2 fee, or it's every year a $2 fee?
Madam Chair, so currently, minus the newly, minus the added language from the House, the companies must pay this $2 or $5 fee every year. So we would be changing that just to those who are newly appointed. So it would be a one time, unless they are terminated, and then if they're reappointed again, then they would have to pay the fee again.
So I'm wondering why add that language that was amended in the House?
I might look to the reviser. I think that there was some concern that the addition of the sole word newly on line 38 was not sufficient in clarifying that this is limited just to the newly appointed agents. I think this was the House's intent on just clarifying.
My impression was that the concern was that when you say newly and you don't say terminated, that then that license would be theirs forever, whether they're working for the same company or not. Isn't that the issue? So they put newly, meaning that's your initial fee when you are appointed, and if you stay working for State Farm for the next 30 years, you don't pay that fee again. But if you are terminated or leave and you go to work for another company, you still have to pay that $2 fee with the House's additional language. Am I correct? Yes. Thank you. Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Eric, thank you for your presentation. This is kind of a 30,000-foot question. So you eliminate the fees alone, expect to reduce revenues by $6 million. So with all the things that we've been doing on all our bills, you guys look at, like, if we have this excess, let's say it's $50 million, whatever the number is, how are we actually, these $6 million, what's that going to be doing to us? Have you guys done any kind of, what's 5 years from now going to be looking like?
Great question. The department does have a very healthy ending balance of about, last I checked, $72 million. That has, despite our historical reductions in revenue, our balance continues to increase. We see this almost as necessary to ensure that we lower our ending balance. I'd be happy to review with you. I can provide you with our balance sheets and whatnot.
I'm just interested in the full picture. If we didn't have the 72 million, what's happening as we go forward?
Sure. What I'll say is that it is insurance regulation, interstate insurance regulation. As the agents in this committee know, it's very easy with the few clicks of a mouse. You can be licensed in 50 states and 5 territories in DC very quickly. And we are seeing that across the board, that most of the agents we regulate in Kansas are non-resident agents, and naturally over time we're receiving more revenues because of that. We're receiving more revenues due to historical sweeps that are no longer taking place since some litigation happened a couple years ago, and so our revenues have been consistently going up. We're confident that with these reductions in revenue, we shouldn't experience any issues. I think that what you're alluding to is, are there any concerns from the department about us staying in the black? We have no concerns with that, and I think that notwithstanding the $6 million reduction in revenue, the flexibility to lower fees and raise fees up to what the current cap is in statute, I think that that can give us the necessary tools to ensure that we'll be fine at the end of the day. I'm not sure if I answered your question. I might have spoke a little bit too long on that.
Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps a clarification for the members of the committee, Eric, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is the licensing for the agent. The agent must continue their licensing. If you're going to go, like I just recently re-upped my license in Alabama, and they changed their ruling and said, you have to prove you're a citizen, which was a lot of fun, which, anyway, I won't go into that. Should have accepted my driver's license immediately, but decided that, I waited too long to turn in my driver's license after I had already applied, even though it was a renewal. It's not as simple as people might think, but you go on to NIPR, but you have to pay your $150 or your $250 per state to be licensed in that state each time you renew with that state. So it could be quite expensive to be licensed in multiple states. So licensing, doing your CE credits and all of that is very different than this. This $2 is like if I'm Humana and Beverly Gossage is going to write a plan for Humana, I would have to pay the department that $2 for each agent that I have that's licensed with Humana to write business in the state of Kansas. So this is what the insurance company is paying on behalf of the number of agents that they have writing business as opposed to agent licensing. I just thought I would clarify that.
Very good. Committee, any other questions of Eric? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Eric. So this was House Bill 2050. We do not have any opponent testimony. We don't have any neutral testimony. One thought the reviser had on page 3, just before we close this hearing, would it be any clearer to all of you and to those that were licensing if we said at the bottom of page 3, the company shall pay a one-time fee of $2 for each agent newly certified by the company until such time as that company or the agent terminates that appointment? Would that make it a little clearer, a one-time fee? Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I was looking at this. The issue, I think, is when you say shall pay a fee until such time. So you pay the fee at one time, and then I think we need another sentence that says the certificate of authority expires at such time that either the company or the agency terminates such appointment. So I
For
can,
conversation.
yeah, that's for conversation, and I can certainly try to work with the reviser. But I think that
trying to make it
separates.
clear, right.
Yeah, we didn't want to make it separate, clear, but if you say shall pay a fee until such time, that's what makes it feel like the fee is ongoing.
Okay. Senator Warren, yes?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think that's kind of correct, because the sentence, you're talking about paying the fee, and you're paying the fee until such a time. It's not talking about, to me, reading the language, it's not talking about how long you're certified. It's talking about the payment of the fee. So if we're, and maybe it's clear to the industry and it's not an issue, but it's not talking about the expiration of the certification, it's talking about the requirement of the paying. And it looks like the requirement of the paying is a requirement until you're either terminated, until you've, the appointment is terminated. And then it sounds like you might get your $2 back. Right? I mean, you've had to pay it and then,
Points will.
so, yeah, because it's to me all tied to the paying, not the certification, so.
Senator Gossage, did you want to weigh in on that?
No, I agree that I think it's ambiguous right here. As we've all heard just already, we have 3 different opinions. So if Senator Francisco or I either could work with the reviser on try to clarify that, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. That sounds great. Eileen?
Madam Chair, if it might help, maybe I can work with the legal department of the department to come up with some better
Department of Insurance?
language.
Sure. Yeah, great. Thank you. Good conversation. Thank you so much. Because we do want to make sure we're making good public policy, right? So thank you. Thank you for that. I will now close that hearing on House Bill 2050, and I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 2048. Eileen, would you like to give us a quick overview on that? I have one. Do you want mine? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2048 is the bill that we had that would eliminate the requirement that the Commissioner of Insurance submit 2 different reports to the governor. The bill strikes certain specific entities from the definition of person in the insurance enforcement statute. Luckily, this bill was not amended by the House Committee on Insurance, and the bill passed the House Committee of the Whole on a vote of 105 to 12 on February 5th. And with that, I can stand for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. Senator Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Eileen, for that brief. On page 2, and we're talking about defining person on line 29, did we do something with the definition of person last session in the insurance code or anything? It sounds a little familiar.
We added the language that said in any other entity, something.
And any other legal entity engaged
That's
in the
the one.
business of insurance, and now
Right,
we're
and it-
striking it?
Nope, we're broadening it and then striking some of the specific entities at the top of the definition.
Well, we're also striking "and any other legal entity engaged in the business of insurance." And that's a policy question. But, so we did do something about the definition last session, and now we're looking at it again. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions of the reviser? Okay, very good. Eric, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric Turek, again with the Kansas Department of Insurance, pleased to provide proponent testimony on House Bill 2048. The senator from Johnson is correct that we have visited this statute, particularly the definition of person statute, repeatedly over the past couple of years. And I'll be honest with you, Senator, this first really started with with Automobile Club, which is on line 34 of page 2. We've sought to strike that for a while now. The department hasn't regulated automobile clubs for, I think it's been 4 years now. And I think when we first visited this statute, we did not address that, but we added "and any other legal entity under the jurisdiction of the commissioner." There are new entities that are created in law that aren't explicitly added into this statute. Utilization review organizations, I don't think, are in this definition. That's one example. There are a couple professional employer organizations, continuing care, residential centers. Those are no longer under the jurisdiction of the department, but those never existed in this statute. And so that was the main intent of adding in the last bit of that sentence beginning on line 38 of page 2. We did attempt to remove the bulk of these entities at the bottom of page 2 last year. I think that along with 2 other bills, including the fee bill that I just discussed, those died in conference. So we have visited the statute a lot. We are hoping to, the main purpose of removing a lot of these individual entities is in the case of deregulation or transferring of the authority to regulate to other entities. We don't constantly have to visit the statute when there are changes made to that. As the reviser first stated, there's an annual report that must be submitted to the governor. The commissioner already posts these on the website. On page 3, there's a report dating back to 1993 that was submitted to the legislature and the governor. That's just cleanup. I know that the senator from Douglas added an amendment on page 1 in Senate Bill 27 to clarify that the report would be posted on the website. We have no issue with that too. So I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Eric. Questions of the committee? Senator Francisco.
I think it was an amendment that I suggested and the committee added.
Very good, yes. Any other questions for Eric? Thank you, Eric. We have no opponent testimony. We don't have any neutral testimony. So I will close the hearing on House Bill 2048. So committee, good time. Our timing was good today. Not that we had a good time, but the timing was good. Maybe I should rephrase that. No, it was all fun, all fun. So tomorrow we do have 3 more hearings, just so you're prepared. 2045, 2044, and 2042. It's in the calendar on the agenda, but I just want you to be aware of that. We will have 2 hearings on Thursday. We don't plan to meet on Friday, and I don't know about Monday. We'll have to see. We have to see, because we've got quite a long list. So probably not on Monday, but we'll decide that on Thursday. How's that? All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Committee adjourned.